Hello there, guys. Welcome to your Linux tutorial. In this tutorial, we are going to talk about input/output redirection. And let's just recap what we learned in the previous tutorial. Because the computer deals with rather abstract notions of input and output streams, and that's what we learned in the last tutorial, you can actually redirect the output of some of the commands you run. Let's say, and actually let's look at the contents of our directory here. And let's say that, oh, I apologize, I just opened everything. Yeah, we're here. Okay, so let's actually look at some of these files with cat. So basically, let me say that I want to print these contents on my screen, the contents of the file ab2.txt. I press enter, and here I get the entire contents on the screen. However, let me just, for the purposes of this tutorial, consider a situation where I would like to print the contents, but not on my screen, but actually in another file. If I wanted to do that, because again, we already talked about this, that output doesn't necessarily need to be on the screen. It can be in a file. We can also, for example, maybe output something to something else. For example, we can output something to the network. Let's think of it like that. So basically, we have the liberty to choose where we want to output something. And if we want to say to the Linux command line, well, listen, we would like to output the contents of the output of the cat command somewhere else, I would actually write this greater than sign right here, and I would press a space, and then I would write the file name which will contain the result of this command. So let me just write this as output.txt. And so let's just repeat what will happen. So basically, this will execute just like it did above, and the result is going to be this. But instead of this result being printed on our screen with this portion right here, we just said, hey, we would like to actually have this put in the output.txt file. Okay, and if I press enter and I type in ls, we can see that I got some output.txt file, and if I display its contents, it will be these contents. Okay, so basically what we have done is we redirected the output. Now let me just give you some pointers in regard to this, because these are important to note. First of all, if you write something like this, you have to understand that this would override a file named output.txt if it already existed. If you want to append to a file if it already existed and not to override it, what you need to write is you need to write I apologize for this brain fart. You would have to write two greater than signs. Okay, so not only one greater than sign, because then it will override the file if it already exists. You have to actually put two greater than signs. Okay, and so basically, if you put two greater than signs, it will append to the file if it already exists, and we can actually run this, and then we can see what output.txt contains, and we can see that it contains all of these contents yet again, right? So it contains all of these lines. Well, the first 4 lines are from the first command we ran here, and then the second contents are from this command we ran here. But just to show you, if I didn't put two greater than signs, if I just put one greater than sign and pressed enter, and then I display the contents of output.txt, I would just get these, basically it would get overridden, right? So I would just get these 4 lines, okay? Also, if you want to redirect standard error, now we talked about standard error. Standard error is actually if we mess something up, and we'll actually show an example right now. So basically, if I want to redirect standard error as well, what I would have to write is I would have to write the and sign here, okay? And now let's just, for the purposes of, for informative purposes of this tutorial, remove the ampersand and write here non-existent.txt. And if I press enter, it will tell me non-existent.txt, no such file or directory. But this error is actually printed on the screen. And why is this error printed on the screen and not in this file? Well, because we haven't redirected the standard error to the file as well. And the file is now empty because we have just overridden it just to prove it. So cat output is empty, okay? And now if we actually want to redirect the standard output, so if we want to get these error messages, standard error. So if we want to redirect standard error into this file output.txt as well, we would have to put the aforementioned ampersand here. And then if I press enter and then I cat output.txt, the error actually got logged to output.txt and not to our computer screen. Okay. Also, if you want to append to an already existing file, you would use the regular to greater than signs, but if you also wanted to append standard error, you would use this ampersand. Okay, so this would append to an already existing output.txt. That is, it would not overwrite output.txt, but append to it if it already existed. Okay, you can just redirect the standard error. So if you just want to redirect standard error, you can use the following, I would say, sequence of symbols. So you can use 2 and then the greater than sign. And you can also make a command read input from a file. And if you want the command to read input from a file, you will actually use a less than sign. Okay, so not greater than sign, but a less than sign. And this doesn't make sense. Just be aware that this doesn't make sense for now. That's what I want to say. But just be aware that you can use this and it's a less than sign. Okay, and by the way, if you're wondering why is redirecting standard error equal to writing 2 and then a greater than sign, that's because standard input, standard output, and standard error have numbers associated with them. For standard error, it is the number 2. Okay, so this is pretty much it for this tutorial. We covered a lot of that. We showed some of it. Some of it I just told you that it exists. Basically, I think that the thing you will mostly use from all of these is this thing right here, which redirects both the standard error and the standard output. But even that you will not use that often. I mean, at least in my experience, because usually, unless you're doing some stuff which are kind of remote, usually you want to well, there are basically 2 reasons why you would like to place something in a file. You want to place something in a file for a later analysis. So if you were to place some output in a file, both the standard error and the standard output, then you can analyze it later. Second reason is if you want to run something and you want to store the result or the output of that thing which is running in a file. Then you use stuff like these. So for example, here we just used it with the cat command, but you can use it with other commands as well. But you can obviously, there are other uses, but again, I haven't really found myself, as I'm using it on my personal computer, using this input output redirection very frequently. But again, it is useful if you want to, for example, redirect it to a file for later analysis, or if you want to kind of just redirect it because you are not present on the computer, or you just basically just for some reason want it to be not on the computer screen but in a file. Okay, so this is it for this tutorial. I hope you learned something useful, and I will talk to you very soon.